Members of council, if you can please come into the council chambers. Okay, members of council, we'll just do a quick Councillor Perks. Councillor Perks, I believe that Councillor Thompson wanted to release PH 13.5, and you just held it down because you just want to say a couple words and we can release it?
No, there's also a supplementary I need to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you want to move the supplementary?
And I'll speak to it, and it will take me less than a minute.
Okay.
Okay, so I would like to move that City Council adopt the following recommendations in the supplementary report June 20th, 2024 from the Executive Director. Housing Secretariat and the Executive Director, Corporate Real Estate Management. 1, that City Council authorize the public release of confidential attachment 1 following the conclusion of negotiations and issuance of the purchase order amendments referenced in the report. So members, this is Cummer. This is the Cummer modular report. We asked city staff to provide us even more detail than they had in the original report so we could really understand the consequences of the delay. The motion I'm moving here makes a lot of the information that the public has been clamoring for on those cost escalations become available once the negotiation with a party is complete. I cannot wait for that day, and I ask you all to keep it bookmarked in your mind. This is a very important conversation we need to have around the province and how they do and don't support affordable housing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So on the supplementary report amendment by Councillor Perks, all in favor, show of hands, carried. Item is amended. Pardon? Recorded vote. Yes, this is on the item as amended.
Councillor Cheng, please. Are you able to vote? Deputy Mayor Malik, please. Councillor Crisanti, please. Speaker, the item is amended. Carries. The vote is 18-1.
Thank you. Recess, MM 19.25. Councillor Matlow.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I've got 3-4 questions. There's been questions raised regarding the heritage status of the Ontario Science Centre. Could staff tell us, is there work being done now to ensure its protection under the Ontario Heritage Act? Through you, Madam Speaker.
Yes? Go ahead.
I already did. I did it. I asked a question.
Okay.
Where's heritage?
Who's answering? Oh, there you are.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Through the chair, the Ontario Science Centre is listed on the city's Heritage Register and is recognised by the province as the provincial heritage property of provincial significance. The Ontario Heritage Act also enables municipalities to designate properties of cultural heritage interest. City staff are currently preparing a notice of intention to designate for consideration by the Toronto Preservation Board at its meeting on August the 19th, 2024. If recommended, it would be considered by City Council at its meeting on September the 5th.
Thank you for your good work. Madam Speaker, Section 6 of the lease that the province has with the City of Toronto seems to imply that there is a duty on behalf of the provincial government to maintain the Ontario Science Centre in good order. Can staff confirm that they are looking into the province's responsibilities and obligations and will report to the July 11th Executive Committee?
Through you, Madam Speaker, indeed, yes, we are, and will report back.
Thank you. There's been some discussion about a permit a building permit submitted for the Science Centre on May 9th, 2024. Proposal for sectional roof and roof deck replacement with new steel deck and new roofing membrane. Can we confirm that this was submitted to the city and was being processed by the provincial government before they decided to unilaterally close the Science Centre? And would that suggest that there was some intention to do some repairs before that?
I can confirm through the chair that Toronto Building has received an application for a building permit on May the 8th for some repair work to Building C. That application has been reviewed. However, the permit has yet to be issued. The application was reviewed on early this June. I don't have the exact date in front of me. And further information has been requested in order to complete our review.
Thank you. Certainly curious, given the fact that it seemed to be a very surprise announcement on Friday that it had to be permanently closed. That's my editorial. I didn't mean for you to answer that. And then lastly...
Matlow, please ask your question.
Oh, indeed. That was just some commentary.
Please ask your question.
My last question, no, admittedly some commentary. My last question is city staff aware that there have been some well-meaning philanthropists out in our community who have offered to, in one way, shape, or form, if allowed, to contribute to the repair of the Science Centre?
Through you, Madam Speaker, yes, Councillor, based on media reports, city staff are aware. However, it is a provincial asset, so that would have to be managed through the province.
Correct. Thank you very much.
Councillor Holyday, questions?
Mike, thank you. Part of the motion suggests the feasibility of the city operating the Science Centre. I wonder if staff have any sense, if anyone's done any looking about what that would cost or what that would be involved.
Through you, Madam Speaker, I think on the basis of the existing operations, we could estimate what the cost to the city could be.
No, has anyone even looked? I mean, I just pulled up in a couple seconds the financial statements. Do we have any kind of preliminary idea of what it takes to run that place?
So it would be at a significant cost if the city were to assume those operations.
Would it surprise you? I think if I got this right, the operating grant was $19 million.
Yes, we are aware of that through public financial statements.
And the gross operation is about 30, and the revenue from admissions is something like 2 million. That
yes, we are aware.
Gives you a sense, right? Okay. And so that's the type of thing that if this report was passed would come back to let us know what the sticker price is. And do we have any sense about what burden that would be for the building if we were to take it over and have to repair it and look after it and do things? It's 1969, right?
Correct. So based on public reports, there was a building condition assessment conducted in 2022. Over a 20-year period, this building needs a total of around $370 million.
Only?
Over the next 5 years, the building needs $164 million, some of which would be immediately needed to make the building safe.
Science North up in Sudbury, I think, is around 12,000 square feet. Anybody have any idea what it would take to build something like that from scratch?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Pasternak.
I have something.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you to staff, in July of 2023, almost a year ago, Council passed the following motion. Members' Motion 8.4, Protecting the Science Centre to Support Thorncliffe and Flemington Park, by Councillor Matlow and seconded by Councillor John Burnside. I can't seem to find any indication that staff reported back on this motion. Am I missing something, or did you report back?
No, you are correct, Councillor. Through you, Madam Speaker, we have not yet reported back.
The report was due in the third quarter of 2023. I'm just,
So the staff have been undertaking work since that motion was put forward, including understanding the necessary capital costs through public reports, of course, what it would take to operate this facility. And it's been the subject of the New Deal negotiations. But you are correct, we have not yet reported back.
so when it comes to the safety of buildings in our city, we have federal buildings, we have provincial buildings, we obviously have municipal buildings, we have private buildings, private businesses. At the end of the day, who is responsible for ensuring the safety of structures in the city?
The asset owners are responsible to keep a building safe and to ensure that the occupants, the public, are safe. So it would be the asset owners who would have that responsibility to keep the building in a state of good repair.
So when it comes to property standards, that clearly is municipal jurisdiction. Do we have the right to go on public and private property to enforce our bylaws?
Yes, I believe that is correct.
Do we have the reach at the Science Center, or that's unlikely?
Sorry, Councillor, I'm not able to answer that question. I'm not sure we have our MLS team here to answer.
So you've given a figure that the Science Center has a $19 million operating subsidy? That's a number that's been...
So that's based on public financial reports.
Right. So is that a number before funds received at the gate?
That's a subsidy that's provided by the provincial government, which supplements revenues through the ticket sales.
So it's 19 in the red?
It's a subsidy provided by the province.
Right. So we don't just subtract ticket sales after that. That is a net loss.
It's a subsidy or a grant that's provided to operate the facility. The facility, based on public financial reports, has lost $1 to $2 million over the last several years, and I think that's true pre-pandemic as well.
$1 to $2 million annually?
Yeah, yes.
And that's after receipt of the $19 million subsidy?
That's correct.
All right, thank you very much.
Councillor Crescenti.
Thank you, Speaker. So just the idea of the City of Toronto potentially operating the Science Centre, which is a provincially owned asset, has there been any discussion with the province of that possibly being an opportunity to actually could take place?
Through you, Madam Speaker, not up until this point, no.
No. So we'd have to get the province fully on side, fully in agreement for that to happen.
Yes, through you, Madam Speaker, that's correct. This would be subject to negotiation with the province.
So they could just say no, and that's it. So in terms of looking at the feasibility of operating the Science Centre, that discussion could end pretty quickly after the first phone call.
It was the subject of discussions between the city and the province in terms of the New Deal negotiations.
Okay. And can you just reiterate again, in terms of the state of good repair, there are a number of things that need to be addressed in terms of state of good repair. So how much is needed to address all those issues? Do you have a number for that?
Over a 20-year horizon, it's a total of $478 million. That's a combination of base building repairs totaling around $370 million and an additional $109 million for exhibits and fit-up costs. This is based on publicly available information.
So if we were to operate it, who pays for that?
Again, through you, Madam Speaker, all subject to negotiations with the province.
Right, okay. And what is the current lease, the status of the current lease between the province and the city, because they lease the land that it's on, right?
Correct. The lease is, it's a tri-party agreement between TRCA, who owns property in the 50 acres, the City of Toronto, and the Province of Ontario. It's a 99-year lease. It commenced in 1965. The first term ends in 2064, and there's an option for renewal of an additional 99 years.
So we're not even in the middle of that 99 years? Or we're getting close?
We're getting close, yes.
Okay. And what happens if the lease is broken?
So that's what we need to do further work on. We're working in collaboration with our legal services team to review the terms of the lease to determine what the city's recourse is.
There will be an obligation from the province, I guess, to make up the balance and negotiate the balance and make the city whole on the balance of that lease.
So certainly, based on our initial work, the province couldn't simply walk away from this lease, leaving the asset to us.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, or Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Candavel.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Just a few questions of clarity. I think certainly our office, and I know many others have had questions from the public about what's going on. Just to confirm, the land is it entirely owned by the city and TRCA? And are we the majority of it?
Yes, that is correct. The land is owned by the TRCA and the City of Toronto. The majority of the buildings that make up the Science Centre are on TRCA land. There are the entrance of Building A and north and south parking lots belong to the City of Toronto.
To pick up from Councillor Crisanti's question, in terms of the lease details when they were signed, that 99-year component, was that strictly only for the operation of the Ontario Science Centre, or did that include, or does it include other uses?
Through you, Madam Speaker, the lease restricts the province's permitted use on the site to a science centre, but it does not obligate them to operate one. So it restricts their use to a science centre.
Gotcha. As part of, if you could give clarity to what was the context to, you had mentioned 2 times that the site was subject to negotiations as part of the New Deal. What was the context you're referring to?
So it was, one of the terms of the New Deal was a discussion around partnership opportunities with the city for maintaining public community-oriented science program at the current Ontario Science Centre, the details of which needed to be negotiated.
Has that happened?
No, not to this point, through you, Madam Speaker.
As part of that conversation, was housing part of that conversation?
Through you, Madam Speaker, I don't believe so.
In any interaction with the province on this question of the Ontario Science Centre and the lands in the New Deal, has the province indicated at all that they have intentions to develop or to partner with private industry to develop housing on these lands?
Through you, Madam Speaker, not to my knowledge. The province doesn't own the lands. These lands belong to the city and to the TRCA.
Right. So my question is, like, have they indicated any partnership with us to develop?
Through you, Madam Speaker, not to my knowledge.
Okay. What is staff's opinion on what tools are there for us to ensure the land is used for community and public uses?
So we are, through you, Madam Speaker, we're currently working through the terms of the lease, and we're going to be reporting back on that at the next executive committee meeting.
To that question on what uses can be maintained?
We will include that in our report back.
Sorry, I may have missed it. What's the timeline on that report back?
The next executive committee meeting, I believe, is included in the motion.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me. Thank you.
Councillor Chang.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What would be the consequences of allowing the building to rot and be in need of being demolished, which would also cost a lot of money?
We are currently reviewing, through you, Madam Speaker, the tenant, being the province, their obligations with respect to the asset on the lands and their obligations associated with it.
So in those obligations, then, the state of the building is under consideration in terms of their responsibility within their lease?
We are currently reviewing that with our colleagues in legal services.
Is there an opportunity for the city to consider, as we consider future operational models, something similar to our agreement at Casa Loma, where we work with a third party to operate the site?
Through you, Madam Speaker, I think we have to answer some basic questions first around the lease and the obligations of the province relative to that lease and the treatment of the asset.
Can the city immediately start an endowment fund to collect the monies that are currently being offered across social media, as members of the public now are alarmed by this sudden closure?
Through you, Madam Speaker, the asset doesn't belong to the city, so I think that would be the responsibility of the province.
So there's no formal way where we can create something towards the future, a STEM education fund towards a potential future site development? Like, does it, even if we can't name the Ontario Science Centre, could we create an endowment that we know is going to go to the Ontario Centre, but because we don't currently own it, still collect those funds, but designate it under a STEM education heading?
I'm going to ask the CFO to weigh in on that.
Through you, Madam Speaker, so I believe the question was in terms of being able to collect funds for the purpose of future renovations. There would need to be specific obligations tied to those funds. Our ability to meet those obligations would essentially ensure those funds are held as a deferred revenue, with a requirement for us to return the funds if we weren't able to meet the obligations.
So the answer is it is possible.
Through the Madam Speaker, we could endeavor to determine an approach to take. So yes.
Do you think it's important to do this expediently while people's wallets are open and there is a momentum of people offering these funds towards this site?
So through the Speaker, yes, in a way, we'll explore it. I think that's where things are headed. Is there an opportunity? But the reality is we don't know how much, we don't know for what. And so, I think while we would want to move on this in some expedient way, we're not going to give people a lot of opportunity to figure out exactly what it is that they would be contributing to. So we'd have to use a bit of caution around that, but certainly if there are individuals interested in providing money to the City of Toronto, as the CFO has indicated, they can bind the use of that, and we would set it up as such and see where the future takes us.
As we consider operational models in the future for this site, is it possible to consider the Strong Museum of Play in Rochester, which brings families from across southern Ontario to Rochester for the sole reason of visiting a really well-run museum that is family and education focused?
I think when we reach that point, I think that's a possibility, through you, Madam Speaker.
And in that consideration, is it then also possible that the province would continue with their plan to move the Science Centre downtown and we create our own other family learning and STEM education tourist attraction?
Again, through you, Madam Speaker, I think all subject to negotiation with the province.
Okay, that was your last question. Put the speakers list on the screen. Councillor Matlow to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To begin with, to initially address Councillor Cheng's very thoughtful questions, I have a motion to work with some very generous philanthropists who have put up their hands to call the province's bluff and say, if money is the problem, we're willing to be part of the answer. I want to begin by acknowledging people like Sabina, Craig, and Adam from ex-Shopify, Mariama Tashima Architects, Jeffrey Hinton, Elsa Lamb from the Canadian Architect magazine, Floyd Ruskin and Jason Ash, along with others from Save the Ontario Science Centre, who to this hour have over 60,000 letters from Ontario residents who care about this incredibly important cultural institution. I doubt that there's anyone who either, like myself, has a child or has been a child themselves in Ontario since 1969 who doesn't love the Ontario Science Centre. This is a place that has spurred our creativity, our imagination, sense of childhood, sense of wonder. It's an incredibly important place. And while I recognize that we want cultural institutions to be successful in the downtown core, it shouldn't only be in the downtown core. The Science Centre should remain where it belongs in Flemington Park, which is accessible to not only North York, but throughout the GTHA. Now, you may remember last year, during the mayoral election, Councillor Bailau announced her intention to support moving the Science Centre to Ontario Place. A week later, the Ford government confirmed that that was their intention too, and the narrative at that time was about housing. Nothing about repairs, it was about housing. Then it was acknowledged that the building itself is on a floodplain at a ravine and it wasn't about housing. Maybe the parking lots, but not the Science Centre itself. Then months later, the Ford government conjured up a business plan spending about $1 million on it to justify a decision that they had already made. And then soon after, the Auditor General, the Ontario AG, debunked the business plan, saying that it actually didn't justify the move and didn't take into account a number of factors, including all the busloads of children that would have to find their way down to the waterfront, where the Ontario government is also privatizing public space for an Austrian spa company. That's what's happening. So on Friday, the government opportunistically grabbed a moment where, yes, there are roof repairs that need to be done, and announced unilaterally, as opposed to the New Deal or our lease agreement, that it's going to be closed permanently, even though, with some relatively minor investment, a fraction of what it would cost to put beer into gas stations 12 months early, Science Centre could get fixed up. There's even a building C, that it could accommodate the temporary space needed to keep the Science Centre open. But the Ford government is willfully neglectful. They want, it seems, for the Science Centre to fall into disrepair, so eventually the wrecking ball could find it. So who are they serving? Who are they representing? They're not representing Flemington Park or Thorncliffe Park. They're not representing the people of Ontario. So who are they acting for? Because if it's for the people, it's not us. And that's why it's important that if they're going to abandon the Science Centre and the community, that the City of Toronto takes a stand. What this motion does, along with working with generous philanthropists in our communities, is asking for our objective professional city staff to give us a reality check on the business case, a reality check on the information that they're providing, and a reality check on their obligations to us, the landholder, so that we are made right and that the Science Centre is preserved. If the City of Toronto does end up being the operator of some public entity, hopefully a Science Centre, I would expect that we would be made right financially as well. There is no way that we should be taking on the financial burden of responsibility for a provincial asset, but damn right they should be ensuring that we're invested in well to make sure that this important Toronto asset, this Raymond Murayama masterpiece that was meant to last 250 years, is there for Toronto residents, residents throughout Ontario, and our children in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Holyday to speak.
Thank you, Speaker. A number of years ago, in another phase in life, I spent a lot of time thinking about Science Centre buildings and doing a bit of research on them. And I had a chance to visit a few of them. Of course, the Ontario Science Centre and Science North. And to give you an idea, if you haven't been up to Sudbury, I mean, it's a stunning building. It was done by Raymond Murayama in the 80s. It's a little over a third of the size. So I finally found the numbers online. The Ontario Science Centre is between 500,000 and 600,000 square feet, and Science North is around 200,000. I don't claim they have equal numbers of visitors in different cities, right? But they certainly both serve quite a number of school-aged children. And that's where I think the context most of us might know of people visiting them. But the point I would like people to think about is that they're all sort of fall in the categories of museums and attractions. And museums are places that need to be constantly worked on to remain relevant, to remain fresh, to attract people to them, to be self-sustaining entities. And I think you can easily find out online that running a science centre is very, very expensive. And the Ontario Science Centre costs millions of dollars each year in subsidy, just because it just can't run the way that maybe it was envisioned back in the late 60s and early 70s. But any idea, and my colleague used the word bluff here about the city operating the facility. With all the discussion at council today, and talking about the priority of transit, if we have any precious dollars, they need to go to city objectives first. I can't support a motion like this that goes down that path. To be a little tongue-in-cheek about it, I remember this movie, and it's informed me for so many council debates. It's a Tom Hanks and Shelley Long movie. It's called Money Pit. And the Money Pit was it was a funny story, but you remember it, right? It was a couple that bought a house with passion. They loved the idea of this place, and they moved in and they started to discover things that were broken. And then they got into this big endeavor where they had to do construction, and then they got into a fight with the whole situation and found themselves stuck. And the story Money Pit comes from, they kept just throwing money at it and money at it and money and trying to dig themselves out of the hole. But it just feels like it's one of those things that's a harbinger of so many things that we do. But I'm happy to lend it to any of my colleagues on council. Enjoy it. It's fun. There's a lesson to be learned in all of that. But I hope we'll think carefully. It's the provincial government's asset. It's their responsibility to deliver this museum and this function. And they get to call the shots because they pay for it. And I understand their vision is to refresh it, to come up with something new, to come up with something relevant, to, ignite the waterfront. Not a bad idea. So I wish them well in their endeavor. It's their call. And if the people of Ontario and the people of Toronto aren't happy with what they do, they will send that signal in the next election. I just don't think with all of the pressures that we have, and I appreciate the passions of many people on council, and part of me, loves the idea of a science center and so on. I think we need to remain focused on those big municipal challenges that we've got. We talk about them at every council meeting, but I don't think we need to go down this path. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have you seen it?
Councillor Candeville.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. As a former teacher, I'm saddened to see the closure of the Ontario Science Centre. Over my 12 years of teaching, I took countless field trips to the Ontario Science Centre, even as recently as last year, and saw firsthand how it sparked joy and inspiration in my students. I know that I share this nostalgia and sadness with generations of Ontarians who have visited and benefited from the museum. The recent closure was driven by incompetent and irresponsible governance. The current provincial government had 6 years to maintain the Ontario Science Centre, making it unacceptable that we are now facing the permanent closure and movement of this cultural and scientific gem. Much of the Ontario Science Centre's value comes from its central location, located right off the DVP, as well as on the TDC's soon to be open Eglinton Crosstown. The centre is accessible to urban and suburban residents alike. As Toronto's suburbs do not have many attractions, the Science Centre is a valuable third space for families from across the GTA. Speaking from personal experience and the concerns of Scarborough residents, moving the Science Centre downtown would make it inaccessible for the diverse communities it has served for decades. Ontario Place simply does not have the same capacity or convenience as North York. It is important to note that the City of Toronto owns the land the Science Centre sits on, giving us a stake in its future. I support Councillors Matlow and Burnside in their motion to conduct an objective analysis to assess the feasibility of the city to take over the museum's operations. As the councillors note, the city has an obligation to explore all possible means to keep the Science Centre open at its current location. What happens with the Ontario Science Centre will set the precedent for what may happen to other attractions on city-owned land. I urge Council to fight to keep the Science Centre open in its current location. As owners of the land the museum sits on, we have a role to play in ensuring a future for the Science Centre that benefits everyone. Its closure and removal from the current site would be a major loss to all Torontonians. We need to fight to keep the Science Centre open and explore alternative ways to keep the Science Centre in its current location. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cheng.
I might be one of the only council members who has several years of Science Centre memberships recently under my belt. The most recent one expiring during March break, where I did bring my kids for a visit. And this is an important location to foster learning, to foster social connectivity, all the good things that it brings to our community, to our city, and to our province. These are things that do not deserve the way that it's been treated right now. When I've been visiting the last few times, I was surprised because we couldn't actually go into the building from the front doors. We had to get on a shuttle that was running continually all day and get shuttled to the back of the building in order to access the building. And at first I thought, oh, maybe it's because they're fixing something, renovating something. And then I found out, no, actually the bridge has been determined to be unsafe, and that was their permanent workaround, that those shuttles weren't temporary, and they were very inefficient in the sense of, waiting in line and having to do that extra trip and then doing it again to access the IMAX theater. So I have been alarmed that we are allowing this beautiful landmark to rot. And that is not a climate-friendly approach, because we should be preserving our buildings and leveraging them. Now, whether or not this continues to be a science center or is rebranded as something else, I think there's a great adventure that we can go on as city staff, do the hard work of putting together proposals of how we can have a sustainable model. But as Councillor Holladay is concerned about the financial viability, I think we need to look at great institutions in our city like the ROM and the AGO. These places rely on generous donors in order to bring world-class destinations to our city. And we see that with the sudden closure, many people are coming out of the woodwork to say, no, this matters, and I'm willing to put money on the table to help make this continue, to make it happen. So I really appreciate Councillor Matlow's amendment, because I think we need to strike while the iron is hot. Pockets are open, and we need to make sure that that money stays with us so that we can have a plan to not just sustain this building and this location, but actually make it something even better, something that inspires learning, that brings families together. And as the founder of North York Moms, with 12,000 moms in North York and in my online community, we want to keep a family destination in North York. Yes, we do schlep our kids downtown to the other places that are wonderful in our city, but having somewhere to go where we don't have to fight an hour of traffic or walk and take kids and diaper bags, it can be a lot. And having somewhere local has meant so much, and that's why we have had multiple years of membership. So I hope that we can find a way forward, and this is a rally cry, not just for us here in council, in the City of Toronto, but all across Ontario, because it is an Ontario destination. And I hope that all of the scientists, the technologists, those investing in AI, we will come up with visionary investment, and we will create a visionary destination. Thank you.
Mayor Chow.
Yeah, I have a motion. I believe it's been circulated. Here we are. I'll talk about the motion in a minute. This is, all of you would have seen and experienced the joy and wonder of our kids, ourselves, grandkids, and what they experience in the Science Center. In fact, I'm having a hard time explaining to my grandchildren why they can't go in the near future. And hopefully that will change. It is a very special place. It sparked the imagination and curiosity. It creates a love of science. We all know that. And what is sad is that, especially for the Flemington Park and the Thorncliffe Park communities, this is right at their backyard almost. And that's where the kids go to. That's where people work also, because they employed some of the local residents. And they are just incredibly heartbroken that this is closed. Councillor Holladay mentioned Money Pit, and I looked up the movie. Apparently had a good ending. And a couple went and bought a country house, and the doors were falling off the hinges, staircase come tumbling down, a bathtub fall through the floor apparently. I hope it's not like Science Center. You know what is sad about the Science Center? It is a Science Center, and the successive government has allowed it to fall apart. And that's not acceptable to all of us, not acceptable for people of Toronto, not acceptable for me. In fact, my office have received huge number, just this week, 14,000 letters after the province announced it would close it. And I heard that over 61,000 letters have been sent across Ontario. That's huge. In Toronto, I asked my office to tally up how many we have received across the city. 34,000. That's huge. It's by far the largest number of letters we have received from Torontonians saying that save the Science Center. And so we've seen the outpouring of support, offers of donations that we've heard, fund the repairs, Tech World from Spotify, Moriama's architecture firm. It is just really touching. So we want to tell Torontonians to keep raising their hands, keep helping, let's fix it. And so I welcome the motion to see if we could coordinate all of that and maybe harness that energy and connect it and find some ways to assist. There's one thing, though, in the New Deal. I want to read you the detailed language in the New Deal because it has something to do with the Science Center. And that the province agrees to discuss partnership opportunities with the city for maintaining public, community-oriented science programming at the Legacy Ontario Science Centre. So the motion you see in front of us is that I am tasking the local councillor, Councillor Burnside, and he is waiting to do this, to bring together, with the support of city manager, to lead a design charrette, bringing all the people together with the local communities, Remington Park, Thorncliffe Park, other interested parties, and the province of Ontario, because they're interested in exploring. Let us identify opportunities for maintaining public, community-oriented science programming, because that is what they said they would do. So let's take up their offer, and let us have Councillor Burnside, the local council, lead the charge. And they will certainly report back on what is happening. So, because I think it's important for the local community to have their say, for them to express themselves, and we would like to support that. And there's an opportunity, and the council is really roaring to go. So let's continue to explore what we can do together and find a solution to maintain that joy and wonder, not just to our children and for the generations to come. So thank you for supporting all the motions.
Okay. Looks like we have questions on clarification of the motion, which your motion is very clear. So if it's political, like just clarification of the motion. Councillor Matlow.
Mayor Chow, through you, Madam Speaker. Throughout all of this, we've discussed how important the Science Centre is to the people of Ontario, the people of Toronto. But is it not true that the residents of Flemington Park, Thorncliffe Park, the Don Mills neighbourhood often rely on the Science Centre for both learning opportunities for their local kids, along with many jobs for a community that also includes racialized, marginalized communities who, this is really a critical cultural hub in the heart of their community.
Absolutely.
And what you're proposing may well be the first genuine consultation that they've been offered about the future of the Science Centre itself. Is that fair to say? Like, there hasn't been a provincial...
It is, absolutely. At the last election, in the middle of the campaign, I had an opportunity to talk to a lot of the local residents. And that was the news when it came out, as you recall, that it was going to move down to waterfront. There was a lot of sadness, a lot of anger, and said no one asked us, no one talked to us, no one ever speak to us about what should be in this science center. It's interesting because there are scientists that live in that area. There are scientists that are from around the world. And they have excellent ideas, and that's why I call it a design charrette, bringing them together. And it would not just be listening to the adults. Imagine the children or young people having the opportunity and say, hey, this is something that we would really love to have. And it's just exciting. So Councillor Burnside really want to get started, and he can't do it alone. And that's why in this motion, you would see that it's with the support for city manager, and he's more than willing. And it's interesting because I've also checked in with the province of Ontario because the new deal has been signed end of last year. And I said, well, can we just get started? And he said, yeah, go for it. And it's just things didn't gel. Now it's gelling very quickly because the situation is more desperate. So it is the first time. Thank you for pointing that out.
I'm grateful for that initiative, and I'm grateful for Councillor Burnside's local leadership as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Chang, you need clarification too?
Yes, I do.
On the motion, please.
Mayor, I just wonder, when we say local communities, could that include North York moms and families? Because a lot of memberships are purchased by the many families that are raising their children in such close proximity to the Science Center.
Oh, absolutely. You notice there's an extra word I put in, other interested parties. Mm-hmm. Yes, it absolutely can be. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yes, yes. Families includes dads. Yeah. Yes. There is a North York Dads group, by the way.
I can, in some ways it's interesting, Councillor Chang, to answer, it is all interested parties, right, in other interested parties. Reminds me of possibly a phoenix that could rise up, anyway. Thank you.
Let's try to get the agenda complete. Okay, so that's it?
Yep.
All right, so let's vote on it. Okay, recorded vote.
Councillor Carroll, your vote, please. Motion 1 carries. The vote is 19-1.
Motion by Mayor Chow on favor. Recorded vote.
Councillor Chang, please. Motion 2 carries. The vote is 19-1.
Recorded vote.
Item is amended carries. The vote is 19-1.
Okay, Councillor Pasternak, you have a motion that you want to introduce?
Yes.
Put it on the screen. Okay, there it is.
Yes, no, I do apologize in advance to my colleagues for bringing it so late, and I thank the speaker for allowing this on the floor. But we have a situation in which we need some council direction to push for the completion of negotiations between the City of Toronto and the Ontario Tennis Association that wants to build a facility on our lands. It's urgent that we send a strong message today.
On favor? Carried. Councillor Fletcher, you held down MM 19.29, the Toronto Local Appeal Body. Are you ready to release that? No, it's just that we have staff here. Because we're going to have to do the bike lanes. So are you ready to release that? Because we don't want to keep staff here.
Yes.
Okay. MM 19.29. Councillor Fletcher is releasing. All in favor? Carried. Okay, so if staff are waiting for this, you can go home now and have a nice weekend. Happy Canada Day. All right. So we'll release Councillor Burnside. Councillor Burnside, your motion for the Kodiak, did you just want to move it? Councillor Burnside?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay. MM 19.40. On favor? Carried. MM 19.41 by Councillor Matlow. Would you like to move that?
Yes.
Okay, on favor, carried. All right. So now we'll go to the bike lanes. Now, Councillor McKelvey, did you want to speak first? Okay, because your name's up there. So, Councillor Pasternak. Councillor Pasternak?
No, I'll pass. I've already spoken on the cycling.
Oh. Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do have a few motions on this item, if staff could assist me in putting those on the screen. We've worked closely, as we have since the implementation of Complete Streets on Bloor, with the team here who is supporting the delivery of this particular section of the network. So the first one here is looking at more of a technical amendment, Road to Crescent. So that's just a quick one. I have a couple of other motions, one of which is providing more direction to staff to continue to work around improving the movement of traffic, specifically in the area. So there's a number of opportunities, specifically around key intersections that have been most impacted. And we want to make sure that staff continue to make improvements along the way to support folks who are navigating congestion in the area. The final motion that I have, I hope clerks have it, is with respect to a connection. Or maybe, sorry, that's included as the second part on the first motion. Just a connection that was in the original network and wanting to make sure to put it back because it's a very critical link in our community. So I would appreciate support from my colleagues here today. As everybody knows, there has been a lot of growing pains in Etobicoke Lakeshore related to the implementation of Complete Streets, but as it continues to align with very many important goals that we have, and our community is set to grow by about 30,000 residents, it's critically important we move forward with this long-term infrastructure, and I want to thank staff for their great work. That's all. Thank you.
Speak. You have a motion as
Yes,
well.
yes, I do. I have a motion. Oh, I thought can we put it on the screen? Yes, thank you. So thank you to Deputy Mayor McKelvey and staff who helped me work on this motion. And it's simply to focus on working inside the communities where we are intending to expand bike lanes in areas where people might not have the familiarity or habit of biking. We focus a lot on the hardware, building lots of bike lanes across the city, but in fact, there are lots of areas in our community where most people are still car dependent or transit dependent. And so inviting people to learn about biking, experience biking in their communities is an important part of fostering a new lifestyle, which we are trying to, I think, achieve behavior changes, which is very difficult. People are always used to their existing patterns. So we recently launched a bike share location in Willowdale, and as part of that, we had a community bike ride, and one of the residents who came to the bike ride, he was a new immigrant, and he said, "Oh, I've been here, for a year now, and I've never ridden a bike in Canada yet." So I think, opportunities to give people, and what I've written here is experiential public engagement is an opportunity for us to not just put down the hardware, but invite people to consider the lifestyle choice transition that we're inviting them to. Thank you.
Carol, you have a question for Councillor Cheng?
I do. I apologize for having a question at this late hour, but I need to have a vision of what we're planning here in the way of human resources costs. What is you're talking about expanding upon existing programs. Do you know their current size and funding?
Well, so this is actually for consideration in future budget process. So they are going to propose what is possible and report back before we go to the next step.
Right. So I was just wondering if you're aware of what is currently going on, since the motion calls for an expansion of a program. Are you aware of what it is that already exists that would be getting expanded?
So this is one of the programs is about safe commutes in schools, but city staff felt that it was important to include this because before the motion was simply about developing programs. So they asked that we consider instead a piece about expanding current because we know that there aren't a lot of these engagement opportunities in the outside downtown core at this moment.
So it's not so much increasing the budget of something that already exists. We're really talking about something new and enhanced. So you're aware that we would have to balance the budget before this could happen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKelvey, clarification of the motion.
Thank you. I just want to be clear, the intent
Read the
is
article,
to foster a culture of cycling and ensure its uptake so that we're,
not us.
for example, in condominiums, can we get people to ride to get their groceries? Okay, as we grow our city. Okay,
That's
thank you.
right. Thank you, thank you.
Mayor Chow. I believe that you want to.
I want to
move
have a motion to extend the time for us to finish all the items so we don't have to come back for 20 minutes or half an hour tomorrow.
Okay, on favor? Carried. Councillor Myers, did you speak? Councillor Myers, would you like to speak? Oh, you've already spoken. Okay. Just a sec. Councillor Holliday to speak. Councillor Holliday?
Yes, may I ask the clerks to present all of my motions? There's a bunch on 14.3 and one on 14.4. We can list them. Speaker, I've got a number of motions. I'll work through them really quickly. I'll offer some comments. In my motions, there are a couple of deletions from the plans specific to Etobicoke. There's a motion that asks to prioritize consideration of congestion and impact to emergency services when working through cycling plans. There's also a motion that asks that we prioritize putting information up front when we're looking at reports on cycling or proposals for cycling that brings right to the front when there's impact to traffic lanes, when there's impact to parking, when there's impact to turn lanes, and also to look at if there's another way to bring these processes through on a regional basis through the community council areas, because I find that our process is difficult when we as a council are looking at the broad 416 and the need to make decisions about cycling infrastructure on the other side of the city when we don't have a full understanding of all of the nuance on it. And in addition to that, the volume information at one single time is almost impossible to wade through. I also want to prioritize the Etobicoke Greenway. And finally, the motion that I moved in there is to rescind council's decision on the Bloor Street extension. Members of council, what you have to know, and the Etobicoke councillors can tell you this, is by far the installation of the cycling infrastructure on Bloor Street out in the West End has eclipsed pretty much every political issue there. We hear about it every day. It has infuriated people. It has caused a lot of difficulty in the community, has caused a lot of concern. It's actually undermined people's confidence in their government. This is what I'm hearing. And I asked some questions about a Mill Road installation out in Etobicoke, which on paper is not terribly controversial. It doesn't take any lanes out. There's hardly any changes really to anything other than the addition of some cycling lanes on one side of the road, walled off with barriers that links a multi-use trail in Mississauga to Centennial Park. But the community consultation went very difficultly. And that's because the installation of those Bloor lanes caused a pall and a negative sentiment across the community and doubts about all cycling infrastructure. So what I'm appealing to council to is to hit the reset button out in Etobicoke and allow us to bring things back in slowly. The Etobicoke Greenway is a project that I'd like to see accelerated. I think is going to be well received. I think it's going to do a lot for cycling in Etobicoke, and I'd like to see that brought to the forefront. Members, I've done a lot of consultation on this in many, many formats. I've heard from a lot of people. I can show you the stack of comments I've got. I can show you the number of emails. I can talk to you about the calls that I've got. And there's some prevailing advice that came from that. Overwhelmingly, people were identifying that when council thinks through the decisions on cycling infrastructure, they consider a number of factors, but they don't give them the appropriate weighting. And what they wanted to see was our consideration of cycling installations put up front, thinking about the impacts to congestion and thinking about the impacts to emergency services. So one of my motions suggests that we put those up front as factors. And finally, as I alluded to when I presented these motions, the way that this comes before council in multi-year steps and then tranches of work, it is very difficult of a council of this size in a volume of projects that you've got in front of you to really do some meaningful analysis to understand what this is doing to our city, let alone the local knowledge that you would need to understand the road systems and how the community works. I actually think that we could do this better and more effectively within community council areas. And I'm not suggesting we tear open the delegations and change all of that, but I am suggesting that this can be done better. And if we do it better, and if we're better at community consultation at that local level, I think we can restore people's confidence in the decision-making by this council for this infrastructure. And there's going to be controversial projects, and there's not controversial projects that could go ahead and make this a better city. But maybe we can find a way to get those done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Speaker.
You do have a question, and
Sure.
it's from Councillor McKelvey, Deputy Mayor McKelvey, coming up here. Yes?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Your points on congestion, emergency services, impacts on travel lanes, parking, and turn lanes, like, understood. Would you agree that's appropriate to report back through the quarterly reports, where we improve the individual projects?
I think there's a couple of places for those. So I want to be really clear. When we're discussing a report like a multi-year plan to cycling infrastructure, it would be really helpful to have that preliminary information about which of those projects are likely going to be removing traveled lanes, because they fall into a bucket. Conversely, those that aren't removing those fall into a different bucket that's far less controversial, say. I don't know every project, but that data could be gathered up front in a more transparent way. Otherwise, we are approving staff to go work on projects that we don't have a sense of the gravity of them. So I think there's a better way to do that. And I'm sorry, you asked me about congestion in emergency services. When staff bring us an evaluation about why something should rise to the top and be pushed forward, they use an equal weighting in many of the categories that they're looking at, about gaps, about equity, about buildability. What I learned through the consultation process was that because of the equal weighting, the things that were really, really important to people about congestion in emergency services weren't given the appropriate weight. So I think that we could change our methodology to increase the weighting on that, and we might find better outcomes.
So I like where you're going, but I have some friendly amendments to say instead to consider impacts to congestion emergency services for each project and report back through those, because the problem is when you have this network plan, we don't have that information yet. That's actually what they're going to study when they then decide on what to come forward through the quarterly. So I'm just that's the conflict that I see. And I see your list of the different projects that you want to pull out, but the problem is for that, well, firstly, some are in your ward, and I've always been more supportive of projects when you come forward and problem solve within a ward. Some are in your ward, and we don't know if they're on street, off street, and we don't even have that level of information.
Exactly, I do, because I got that next layer of information because I had to drill down and I had to ask for it. It's impossible for me to bring it to council. And that's the flaw in the decision making. And that's why I can prove to you why I think that these things that are being taken out are controversial, because I can refer to that layer. You should have that data right now.
But they don't have it. Like,
they
for
do.
some of the projects in my ward, I don't know.
I got it.
Or I asked them to refine it. They might have had it.
Can we just have a question and answer here, please, not a discussion? Thank you very much.
So really, like, what you want is a better engagement with councillors to look at that in advance of it coming for its final approval?
And that data put up front, because in order to put those lines on a map, Speaker, the staff would have had to have some preliminary assessment of what these are, knowing that it's not guaranteed, but there's some sense about how this is going to work.
So why aren't KSIs in your list?
KSIs are already part of the matrix. So back to that on weighting, it's already in the matrix. The problem is that sometimes it's put on equal weighting as congestion. And when you've got 1 or 2 or 3 KSIs on a particular project area that's not statistically significant to even understand if there's an impact, but there's a fundamental change in congestion that has a big impact, they're not considered on the same weighting.
Thank you. Sorry, that
Okay,
was your
thank
last
you.
question. Is there any other questioners for Councillor Holyday? No, thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Moyes, you have a question? 1 minute.
Just a quick question for Councillor Holyday.
Sure.
Do you have a national petition for this?
Okay, actually there is one floating around. There is one with thousands of signatures floating around on it. I'm glad you raised it. You know, I'm sure you can look online for the petition to remove the Bloor Street bike lanes, since you brought it up.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Was your question answered, Councillor? Yes, thank you. All right, Speaker Nunziata, it's your turn.
You know what?
France, your turn. You're up.
Yeah. I'm really surprised, Councillor. I have a motion, put it on the screen, that City Council direct the General Manager, Transportation Services to defer any work related to Maple Leaf Rustic Neighborhood Connections until the completion and implementation of the Maple Leaf and Rustic Neighborhood Streets Plan. So I did ask that question to staff this morning, and they did agree, because we do have a traffic traffic study that we've been working on for the past few years in that area. So we should wait until we go back to the public with all the recommendations from this traffic study, and it's taken now 2 years before we even think of putting bike lanes, because that will be part of the, hopefully part of the report that comes back to the community. I really have a problem that we're pushing these bike lanes in areas, and I did ask that question this morning, where we have construction going on and the city is digging up the road, and then we're waiting until they come back and repair the road. We're digging it up twice, and then we're putting bike lanes where there's construction, which doesn't make any sense at all. And some of them we haven't even had any consultation meetings on them. For example, the one that was at council last month, the Eglinton one, we had to defer that because Metrolinx is doing all this work at Eglinton and Keele with the intersection, and we wanted to put bike lanes. Like, yes, but we need to consult and we need to wait until all this work is done, rather than push these bike lanes through when there's work that's being done. We're duplicating work. When you hear from constituents saying, you're talking about the city not having money, well, you're digging it up now, you're going to dig it up again next year. Like, come on, we have to get everyone together and get all the information you need before you start putting bike lanes in area. For example, Alliance Avenue, my ward, they painted lines about a year ago, half the road, and then it ends. There's nothing. There's no connection. They just painted these lines. And it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't even connect anywhere. I don't know what the purpose of that was. And that portion that they did, they paved the road, and the other half of the road they didn't pave. This is what we're doing. And, you know, Councillor Holiday mentioned Bloor Street. And I have to agree with him with Bloor Street. I was on Bloor Street a couple of weeks ago, and there was an ambulance trying to get down Bloor Street. You know, the ambulance couldn't get through because the traffic was bumper to bumper. We have the patio, we have the Cafe TO out there, one lane of traffic. There is no way that you can move for the ambulance to go by. To me, that's a safety issue. It's taken most people in that area that I know that work in that area are going down the side streets to avoid Bloor Street. I think Bloor Street needed a little more study and more consultation with the residents that live in that area. I don't believe that was done. And there should be, staff should be coming back with the traffic impact that it's had in that area on the local streets, because that hasn't been done. So I have my motion, and I hope you'll support my motion. And I don't have a petition, Councillor Moyes.
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Councillor Bradford next. Councillor Bradford. Councillor Bradford. Once, twice, third time. Just wondering, Councillor Bradford, if you can hear. We understand you're trying to connect to the meeting through your phone, and I don't know if you're having trouble or not. You've left the chambers. We could go to Councillor Fletcher, but unfortunately she's sitting right here. Maybe you could move Councillor Cole's motion for him. That's all I want to do. Councillor Crisanti is willing to move. Could you put your name on the list and move Councillor Cole's motion, please? Councillor Cole has sent a motion in earlier on this item, I believe. Did he not? No, Councillor Cole. Councillor Cole has that motion, and Councillor Crisanti has kindly agreed to stand up and move the motion on behalf of Councillor Cole. Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a motion here from Councillor Cole that the City Council Director or Manager of Transportation Services to further engage with impacted property owners on the west side of Marty Avenue between York Beltline Trail and Eglinton Avenue West in order to communicate changes and to reduce private property encroachment impacts within the public right-of-way. I'm moving this on behalf of Councillor Cole. Madam Speaker?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Fletcher? Okay, so you don't have to speak now. Okay, okay, thanks.
Councillor Bradford is connected to the meeting.
Okay, Councillor Bradford, are you connected?
I am, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, okay.
He has a motion.
Thank you. You have a motion?
I do.
Councillor Bradford.
Okay. Do you want me to start? I apologize. I'm on WebEx on a phone as a guest.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks. I have a motion here on IE 14.3. It's related to the bike lanes that will be studied on St. Clair Avenue East and Victoria Park Avenue in my ward. And I'm asking staff to prioritize options that do not remove the vehicle lanes. I'll continue. It's no secret that I ride bikes a lot. I'm actually on a bike right now. For me, it's generally the fastest way to get around the city. And I think that we've done a good job building a lot of good infrastructure. And we've done some of that in Beaches East York. We've done that on Danforth. But I think we also need to admit and have the humility to acknowledge when it doesn't go as well. My view is that we need bike lanes that are smart and sensible and safe. And that means that some roads are better equipped to have bike lanes on them than others. I think the Bloor West bike lanes in particular are a good example of bike lanes that are in fact wider than vehicle lanes, and the congestion issue out there in the West End is untenable. Congestion is one of the top issues we're all hearing about all the time. We hear about that. And so I think the discussion around cycling has become more challenging when you take into account all the construction projects, all the road closures, all the traffic, and the perception that in some cases, like bike lanes exacerbate that. That's difficult. And so avenue bike lanes, for another example, are ones that when we originally had the conversation about Yonge, it was an either or. It was like, let's go with Yonge because there's business destinations on Yonge Street and not Avenue. And at the time, I might have been thinking Avenue is the bigger, wider, better option. But you do have that hill when you go further north that's quite steep. But regardless, council made the decision to go with Yonge. And so I think that the idea of moving forward with Avenue, it really fundamentally changes that evaluation that we had, where it was an either or, and now it's and. So there's a lot of other stuff here in the 25 to 27 plan, and folks might think it's not ambitious enough, but when we don't get it right, I think we should have the courage to sort of say this doesn't work and let's fix it. So that's it from me, Madam Speaker. Motion's there, and appreciate your accommodation roadside.
Thank you. Last speaker, Councillor McKelvey.
Oh, I'm on? Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have two motions. The first one is in my ward. I'm just wondering, I'm hoping the person on WebEx isn't Brusa trying to call on. No, we're good? Brusa in the car? Okay. Okay, we're muted? Okay. So my first motion is requesting the general manager to look at some options going through the University of Toronto Scarborough campus as we build out and plan for the Eglinton East LRT. there is the potential to have 2 bike lanes instead of 1. We can have one through the Meadowway and one through the current alignment of Military Trail, which would be decommissioned and moved over, and we can have a beautiful bikeway through there. The second, this is, I think, a better option to what Councillor Holyday has asked for. I agree with him in premise that we want to consider congestion a little more meaningfully, emergency services more meaningfully, and also make sure it's super clear when a project's brought forward, any impacts on turning lanes, road lanes, etc. But I think it should be done through the quarterly reports and done so that these projects are being developed with those discussions with the local councillors. So Councillor Holyday has a lot of motions. The only one that I'm prepared to support today is his very excellent motion to advance the Etobicoke Greenway. I think it's a fantastic motion. The others I agree with in premise, but just that they should be done through the quarterly, because right now we don't have the level of detail on those individual projects. But also the projects on taking them out of the network plan, the problem is right now some aren't in his ward. Some of them could be on street, off street. We don't know. We don't know the design. And I think and some of them might not even be in the 2025 to 2027. They might be later. So I agree they might have things in there he needs to resolve, but I think the better way to do that is through detailed design, moving through the engagement and having the things, those important conversations that need to happen, than pulling out a whole bunch without having that level of information here today. I want to thank our city staff for their tremendous work on the cycling network plan. Over the last 5 years, we have rolled out 115 new bike lanes, kilometers of bike lanes in the City of Toronto, and upgraded 90 kilometers. We have an ambitious plan before us for 2025 to 2027 to have new and enhanced bike lanes of 100 kilometers. And the reason we have been successful is we have been working with the local councillors. And I want to commend those councillors that are working very hard to make these projects a success in their communities. They are doing that hard work out there talking to people. You know, Councillor Morley has excellent motions here today to make the projects in her ward even better. Councillor Nunziata has great motions about the timing of her bike lanes. Councillor Bradford has suggestions on how to make those bike lanes a success. Drilling down to that individual level and working through that, that's the way that we will all be successful together. We know we have unprecedented growth in the City of Toronto. By 2051, we will welcome 700,000 new residents. They can't all be in cars. We cannot accommodate that. We need to continue to expand the cycling network if we want to meet our Transform TO goals. We need to continue to expand the cycling network if we want to actually meaningfully combat congestion. We can't accommodate more cars. We need to roll out public transit, all these great things that are happening in the City of Toronto. Unfortunately, building a public transit right now does mean short-term congestion impacts that we have to manage. It's that short-term pain for that long-term gain to have the city that we want, with our ambitious goal to have 75% of trips 5 kilometers and under that are walked, cycled, or by public transit. So this is an important step in that right direction for Transform TO. And thank you to every councillor that has taken the time to work on those projects in a very hard way to make them a success in their communities.
Councillor Perks, you have a question?
I do.
Okay.
So I want to be clear. I was listening carefully to your speech. Is your advice to us that the only motion of Councillor Holyday's that we support is the one that adds a bicycle facility?
That would be correct.
Thank you.
So, Speaker, I would just like the councillor to clarify. The categories are contained on the report, right? There's several of them: safety, equity, current cycling demand, potential cycling demand, connectivity, trip generator, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And through the consultation process, it was determined that these things have a very simple weighting process. And so you're proposing a motion which would take 2 categories that would be important at that point and considers them at the end of the process. So how is that constructive?
No,
if
I'm not
the
saying
evaluation
to,
is
I'm not
upfront.
saying to wait to the end. I'm saying to include that in the report when we make those final decisions in
Right,
those quarterly
the end.
reports.
The
No,
end.
report on the end, not to consider it throughout. They're considered throughout. But congestion is always a point in time. Like the congestion we have today is not the congestion we'll have next year or the year after as these projects move around. So it's difficult to use congestion in the prioritization. We need to be looking at how the whole system as a whole can come together, but also thinking about all those big projects that will come online. Congestion is going to get change when we finally open the Eglinton Crosstown, when Adelaide starts having streetcars on again, when the Bloor construction that is happening is opened up, when the Yonge construction is finished, when the Eastern Avenue that I drive through every day and poor Councillor Fletcher has to deal with that bridge construction that's happening. All of these projects are transient and they're a moment in time. So it is very hard to consider that. But I am asking that when they report back quarterly, that they are making that clear, including all the other fine suggestions you have on turn lanes, lights, etc.
So would you concede that the quarterly report is the implementation report? Because that's what it reads here. So that's when you would introduce the concept of congestion and emergency service. After all the work is done, then we talk about congestion and emergency services. Do you think the public would be happy about that?
The city staff are already considering that. I'm asking this to have out in center in the reporting, which I think is something that you wanted to see before you approve your projects.
I think, so you recognize the difference with the motion I have, that at the strategic level, we should be understanding those things when making decisions about what gets added to the strategic plan. But you would concede that your motion moves it to the end of the process to be highlighted in the quarterly report.
I'm saying the reporting is that it's considered throughout, and right now it's not explicitly reported
not on that
quarterly.
list.
But it's also not explicit in the network plan too.
I don't see it there.
Cities that you were asking city staff questions about that. But again, congestion is a point in time and it is always changing, which makes it very difficult to make a judgment on what congestion is in 5 years. However, when you're looking at a quarterly report, you actually know what it is at this moment in time, which is also super helpful.
Do you think the residents would believe that?
I think that the residents want to be engaged in the process as they have, and I think that many councillors have done a really exceptional job of bringing people along in that process.
Do you think they'd like to have congestion discussed early or late?
That was your last question. Okay, that's it for the speakers. Which item first? I'm going to do all the motions for 14.3 first. And I don't believe there are motions for 14.4. Oh, I don't have those yet. Okay. All right. So the first motion is motion 1A by Councillor Morley. Pardon? Okay, on 1A, on favor? Carried. Three D by Councillor Holiday.
Deputy Mayor Malik, please. Motion 3D does not carry. The vote is 4 to 17.
Next motion. By Councillor Holiday.
Councillor Chang, please. Deputy Mayor Malik. Motion 3E does not carry. The vote is 3 to 19.
Next motion. Okay, can you please speak into the mic because I can't hear you? Yeah, I know, but I didn't hear. Split which way?
Speaker, I had advised the clerk that I'd like to split B and C separately.
B and C separately?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll vote on B and C first? Yes, yes. B and C first, recorded vote.
Councillor Chang, please. Deputy Mayor Malik. Councillor Moyes, please. Motion, parts B, 1B and 1C of motion 1B carry 19 to 3.
Okay, so on the remainder, which is A and D, do you want a recorded vote on that one? No? On favor? Carry. Okay, next motion. Can we please try to keep it down when we're in the middle of voting? Councillor Bravo? Please? Okay, next motion by Councillor Cheng. On favor? Carry. Thank you. Next motion. What is so funny? Why is everybody laughing? Well, okay, the next motion. On favor? Carried. Okay, recorded vote.
Mayor Chow, please. Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Pasternak, please. Motion 3A carries unanimously, 22 in favor.
Okay, next motion. Motion 3B. Recorded.
Motion 3B does not carry. The vote is 9-13.
Next motion. Three C. Recorded vote.
Motion 3C does not carry. The vote is 9-13.
Okay, next motion. Okay, all in favor? Carried. Councillor Bradford's motion. Recorded vote.
Motion 5 carries. The vote is 19-3.
Okay, is that it? One more motion? Councillor McKelvey. On favor? Carried. One more. On favor? Carried. Item is amended. On favor? Recorded vote. On 3.
Councillor Fletcher, please. Councillor Pasternak. Item IE 14.3 as amended is adopted. The vote is 20-2.
Okay, on IE 14.4, we don't have any we have a motion on that one, so we can put it on the screen. Motion by Councillor Holyday.
Councillor Peruzza, your vote, please. Motion 1 does not carry. The vote is 5 to 17.
Next motion. By Councillor Crescenty, on behalf of Councillor Coe, all in favor? Carried. Item, I think that's it, right? IE 14.4, on the item as amended, on recorded.
Councillor Fletcher, please, and Councillor Pasternak. Councillor Crescenty, please, and thank you. Item IE 14.4, as amended, is adopted 19 to 2.
Okay. Councillor Bradford?
Yes.
Yeah. Since you're online, did you want to move that motion?
Yes. Which motion would you like me to do?
The one for Roxborough.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll move that motion.
Okay, we'll give it to Councillor Bradford to move.
So moved.
Okay, we're on the item. So, Councillor Bradford, would you like to move the motion?
Yes, I'd like to move the motion, please.
Go ahead.
I'm moving it. So moved. The motion on the screen there. Yep. Thank you. I'd like to move that motion.
Can you vote while you're cycling and driving?
I'm just walking.
Your helmet on?
I'm carrying a bike. I'm rolling a bike.
Well, that's
Oh,
cycling.
Councillor Bradford, just hold on. I have to go back to the list if they're... Okay, so Councillor Sachs would like to speak. Councillor Sachs, go ahead.
I'm waiting, there we are. Okay, yes, so I have a motion. My motion is to support the staff recommendation. This is a staff recommendation to reject the heritage alteration permit at 135 Roxborough in my ward. I appreciate everyone's support. So,
Okay, so we'll put the motions on the screen. Okay.
Is this the hockey player's wall
Okay.
there?
Oh, Councillor Sachs, you have a second motion?
yeah, my second motion is to keep the city solicitor's advice confidential.
Okay.
Yeah, please vote against Mr. Bradford's motion. Please vote for my two motions.
Hey, you can't
I'm
do
sorry,
that.
Councillor Bradford's motions. I apologize. I'm tired.
Councillor Bradford's motion first, recorded vote.
Motion 1 does not carry. The vote is 7 to 13.
Councillor Sachs's motion, recorded vote.
Councillor Perruzza, thank you. Councillor Mantis, please. Motion 2A carries. The vote is 16-4.
I'm getting seasick watching Councillor Bradford.
Okay, so is it? Yes, I know. Just hold on, Councillor Sachs. The other one, can we put the other motion up?
Watching Bradford.
Okay, the other motion by Councillor Sachs. Okay, recorded vote. Oh, no, we don't have to, that's confidential. On favor, carried. Okay, on the, okay. All right, Councillor Pasternak, did you want to move your member's motion that you just introduced? Oh, okay. I thought it was just a quick item. So, okay. It's not. So this is the last item. So do we have, hold on, do we have questions to staff? If you do, please put your name on the list. Okay, one at a time. No questions to staff? So Councillor Pasternak, did you want to speak? Okay, please, put your name on the list.
Do you want to move it or do you want me to move it?
I'd like you to move it.
I'd be happy to move it, but
Pasternak, oh, sorry, Councillor. Okay, Councillor Carroll to speak first.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We've had a last-minute change. I submitted a motion to defer this item for 1 month, but it would appear that it would be much more constructive if we were to refer it back to staff to report back next month. That way they are procedurally free to make revisions.
Have the motion?
I believe Councillor Pasternak just submitted it this very minute.
I'd like to speak on the item. It's important referral. Councillor Carroll.
So I'm in your hands, Madam Speaker, because I'm trying to accommodate the local councillor, but still make sure that this doesn't get dealt with in its current form. I submitted a motion to defer it for 1 month. Just a nanosecond ago, I was given a referral motion instead.
Okay.
I'm happy to just do the deferral if the clerks feel that that's the only thing that's appropriate, because that I submitted a half an hour ago.
Okay, we'll type up the referral motion. Councillor Pasternak,
Yeah, but you
do you want to speak? Councillor Pasternak.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In consultation with staff and consultation with my colleagues, it was generally agreed that we would refer this back to staff and let negotiations continue for the next 3 weeks.
Now, what's people talking?
The local councillor would prefer it if I was to move the motion, which is to refer this back to staff. We're in your hands,
Yeah.
truly.
So
what
I'm
he
just-
last minute submitted, he would like me to move, and I am happy to do so.
Yeah, so I have the floor, Madam Speaker. I could speak.
Actually, if I'm moving it, okay, well. He's telling you what.
Yes, so there is a motion that Councillor Carroll will move. I'm just rising now to support referral. What you have here is another piece of a negotiation between the Ontario Tennis Association and the City of Toronto. When the Allen East District Plan was adopted by Council, the main community asset that would take place and be built in that district, which is a 55-acre parcel at the east end of the Downsview Secondary Plan, would be a Ontario Tennis Association sports complex, multipurpose sports complex, built at their cost. And they would be given a nominal land lease over a long period of time, and they would be obligated to raise the funds and build it over that period of time. The negotiations have been a little more complicated and difficult than we anticipated, and I brought this motion to send a signal to them that we were going to support various elements of their requests as long as certain conditions are met. In discussions with my colleagues and city staff, they'd like to take another few weeks to negotiate with the Ontario Tennis Association, and they're going to bring back a revised package looking for council direction on next steps. So hopefully we'll have more clarity in the July council, and Councillor Carroll has agreed to refer this back to staff, which I wholeheartedly support.
So on the referral motion, we'll put it on the screen. On favor, opposed if any, carried. Thank you. So that's the last item. So members, before I ask for motion to enact the general bills, may I have a motion regarding the consideration of submissions on zoning bylaw and official plan amendments? Councillor Perks. Councillor Perks.
I don't have the motion, sorry.
No, I know. They're going to put it on the screen. There it is.
Speaker, I move that the committee and council considered submissions in making a decision on zoning bylaw and official plan amendments.
Okay, on favor, show of hands, carried. May I have a motion to introduce the general bills? Mayor Chow.
That leave be granted to introduce Bill 560 and 679 and 681 to 692.
Shall leave be granted that to introduce these bills? All in favor, show of hands, opposed if any, carried. Shall these bills be declared as bylaws and passed subject to section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006? Councillor Fletcher, would you like to do that one? Oh. Okay, pardon? Oh, so yeah. It's been a long day. May I have a motion to introduce the confirmatory bills? Councillor Moyes. Okay, go ahead.
That leave be granted to introduce bills to confirm the point of the introduction of this motion to proceedings of City Council meeting 19 on June 26 and 27, 2024.
Okay, shall leave be granted to introduce these bills? On favor, carried. Shall these bills be declared as bylaws and passed subject to section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006? All in favor, opposed if any, carried. Now, everyone, Happy New Year. Happy Canada Day. Enjoy the weekend. We have fireworks at Amesbury Community Centre at Keele Lawrence. And have a nice weekend. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you to city staff, all the staff here, and thank you to members of council.